Got some O1 tool steel. I'm gonna do a little stock removal because I tried to do some Q-my, and man, oh my, instead of Q-my. I got it in there cooling off right now. But I just need to do something simple now after messing with stuff like this that I really don't know what I'm doing. And it gets frustrating when you have too many failures in a row. It's kind of like when you first start doing stock removal knives and you screw up and crack blades, don't have the right heat, quench oil, stuff like that. That's kind of how I feel with forge welding now. And, trying to make Q-my and Damascus by hand. And how do you like my new fittings? Compression fittings. I guess they're pretty expensive. My neighbor gave them to me. So I can get the gas line away from the forge. It's a lot safer now. Okay, so O1 Tool Steel has had a little controversy over it lately. Everyone used to think it was like the superior steel to like 1095 and W2 or whatever, and it's got tungsten in it. It's tougher. It holds an edge longer. And it turns out none of that's true. It's just a simple carbon steel. Larry Thomas's tests have pretty much proven that. So that's not even a question anymore. But what the question really is this steel good for beginners? And I think it is. I would suggest this to a beginner. I would make sure I let them know you're probably not going to get a full maximum potential of the steel heat treating it in a propane forge. You heat it till it's non-magnetic, stick it in some canola oil, and you'll probably get mid to low 50s HRC, which would make a good knife for a beginner. And the machinability is awesome. The grindability, the drilling, everything. It's great to work with. So I suggest it for beginners because of that. Okay, drilling these holes, I'm using 1 part acetone, 1 part transmission fluid, and it works great. I start off with a cheap drill bit, just a 1/4-inch drill bit, and then I'm making some extra holes here just so the glue can get through, connect the scales together. And then after you do that, then I'm just making some something to help the glue out, all those little marks and stuff, and on both sides, little divots. Anything that can help the glue out is is how I look at it. That says F on it. That's an F-type drill bit. It's just slightly bigger than a 1/4-inch, and I drill all the holes out with it. That makes your pins fit just perfect. And then you got a little countersink here. And, the countersink makes it look nice, and it also gets rid of these sharp corners, so when you go for the quench, you can't get no, stress risers. Okay, here I'm just normalizing the steel, taking it up to where it's non-magnetic. As you see, I just checked it on the magnet. Just let it air dry or air cool. You do it 3 times. Now, you don't need to do this if you get it from like Alpha Knife Supply or something. It already comes fully normalized and annealed, and it's in a softened state. But, humans can make a mistake. So it doesn't hurt a thing by doing a normalization cycle. And that's what I like to do. It's a good practice to do anyway. Okay, I'm going to heat treat it at 1,510 degrees, and I'm going to hold it there for 20 minutes. That's a long soak, but that's what it says on the data sheet from Alpha Knife Supply. I'm putting the knife in now when the oven isn't even 100 degrees yet. I figure it's not going to hurt it by just letting it have a nice long soak. The grain's not going to grow at these low temperatures. Hey, on, guys. Calm down. Attacking me. Waiting on the knife to cook, bake. I haven't made a knife out of 01 tool steel in a long time, and I definitely haven't done it when I had a heat treat oven. So I'm curious to see if I can notice any difference now that I have a heat treat oven. I'm going to do the recommended heat treat from Alpha Knife Supply. I'm going to use Parks AAA. Parks 50 is way too fast. Canola oil, I think, is way too slow. Hank's got that chicken. Got bones all over the garage. These guys are having a good old time. Ever since I started putting knives in the aluminum plates after the quench, letting them fully cool off in the aluminum plates, I've never had one warp yet afterwards, since I started doing it that way. There was quite a bit of scale on this blade, probably from me letting it sit in the oven for so long, but I'm going to use a wire brush here to knock most of that scale off. Scale is very hard, and it's real hard on your belts, so try to use something else besides your grinding belts right away. Well, thanks, Hank. Appreciate that. All right, so okay, I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh my gosh, is he going to temper the blade like this? And the answer is no. But I am going to do a quick temper. A snap temper is what it's called. And that's because my oven takes about 3 hours to cool down properly. If you put it in there too soon, the oven will just shoot right back up in temperature. I just don't want to leave the door open so it cools down too quick and get scale buildup or something on my springs. So I'm just getting the spine a little bit blue and, just trying to darken it up a little. Test it on these files. Make sure we're okay. Start right at 60. It's way above 60. At least a good snap temper. So 65 bites. I'd say it's pretty hard though. This sucker's probably 64. 2 pieces of metal. Get a little couple screws. I harden these. These are 8670. Highly suggest getting something to help you with your plunge grinds. This will take your plunge grinds to the next level. These shredder belts from Combat Abrasive 36 grit. And my Craftsman 2x42, which I have been using for about 7 or 8 years with no problems. Every knife I've made has been on this grinder. So whoever tells you that you need to spend a bunch of money on a grinder, it's the person, it's not the grinder. Got little adapters to it. I put a bolt on here, it's easier to grab. I put a little piece of wood where I can actually adjust it. Got something here where I can keep myself from getting shocked. And when the knife starts getting very thin, I can pull this over, just stick it in the water, and it sprays the belts. It keeps the belts cool if I'm going for a real thin grind. Okay, so now I'm going to do about 95% of the grinding, and that's because the oven is still cooling down. I'm waiting to temper it. I wouldn't do this unless I did a snap temper. Could drop the knife or anything could go ahead, pushing on it too hard, you could break it. They're a little bit brittle coming out of that oil. So I do a snap temper, grind it while my oven is cooling down, kind of doing two things at once. And I'm going to get it down to about the thickness of a dime. I'm going to try to take the grind all the way up. You can see if you get the right belts, a very aggressive ceramic belt, that it turns that 2x42 into a hogging machine. It doesn't take long at all. And that is another thing that is excellent about 01 tool steel. It's very, very machine friendly. I mean, the grindability of this steel is awesome. So I am going to do about a 380 temper, which is pretty low for 01 tool steel. Should be around 63 HRC. Here I'm just going to take a Dremel and just cut a little choil into it. I like to do that after I do my grind. That way I can put that choil, that sharpening choil, exactly where I want it. About a year ago, I started doing decimal tapers on all my handles. I've seen people on YouTube doing it. I'm like, what the heck? Man, it's a game changer. I love it. Really lightens up the handle a lot, kind of gives it a sleeker look. I'm going to use some G10 from Pop's Knife Supply. I also got this 1/4-inch copper rod from Pop's Knife Supply. Drilling holes in these scales can be tricky. They seem like they'd be easy, but there's always a problem, or you always run into something different. One thing that really helps is using that F-type drill bit. I know I keep, beating a dead horse, but it just makes it just so much easier to fit up. My drill bit's a little smoked, but I started putting a little bit of soapy water on it to cool it down, making some extra holes here, just something to give the glue a little better chance. In here I'm just getting all the clear coat finish that they put on it off. Nice surface for the glue to stick to. Put the scales together, make sure they're even at the top, because that's kind of hard to sand once you glue them to the knife. So if anyone watches any of my videos, I swear by G-Flex. I love this stuff. Here I got the scales already, the pin's already running through on the blade. And the reason I did that is because it's such an aggressive decimal taper on the handle that once you put the scales together, the holes don't want to line up quite right, so they do, but they'll give you a hard time. It's good to do it like this, then squish them together, and then put as many clamps on as you possibly can, especially on an aggressive decimal taper like this. Okay, the reason I'm pinging the handles is because it's been about 12 hours since I put the glue and the scales together. I went to bed, I woke up next morning, and it's time to hit it. So the glue takes 24 hours to fully cure. Pinging just helps it out. Here's my, off Amazon, my dust collector. I love it. It sucks up about 80-90% of the dust here. It used to get so messy when I was grinding handles. I just want to point out here, I like the style of grinding I like to do on handles is I put a hex handle on it first. Once you got the hex handle and you got the dimensions you want, like right there, I'm kind of showing you that, it's easy to see how even you are. Then I like to move the glass platen back, lock it in, and create like a slack belt. And the slack belt really helps me round it all off. So now I just round it all off. So it's not like a broomstick handle where it just rolls in your hand every time you cut something. You still have curvature and indexing points where you know where the blade is at all times, So it's just the way I like to do it. I don't know. And of course, hand sanding is a must. It's every knife maker's favorite part to do. This is just some soapy water in my India stone. This is a medium India stone. I love it. It's like a chisel. If you have any deep scratches, this will remove them. It'll hog it off real quick. Wax on, wax off. All right, I got it all cleaned up. I did too. Sanded the handle to 400. Little ferric chloride bath, and then some coffee. Get it nice and dark. All right. Got it all cleaned up, ready for the etch. All right, in it goes. Instant coffee. You gotta make it pretty strong. Yeah. That's fresh out of the ferric chloride. Just gonna kind of blend it all in pretty good. Clean it real good with the Windex. Stuff on. It's strong. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm going to use a 500 Sharpening glass, 4,000, 16,000. Some big jump ups, I know. There's the finish from the coffee. It's real nice, real dark. And, as far as holding these stones, I like to just put a little bit of water on the wood. Psh, there you go. And that will hold it from moving. That little bit. This is a splash and go stone. So that's really all you need. A little bit of splash. Time to go. Okay, so I'm bringing the edge together for the first time. So I'm not going to get a burr. I'm going to try to bring them together very evenly. Started doing ambidextrous sharpening probably about a year ago, and I love it. I love it because when I was just using one hand, I really couldn't get my fingers right by the edge. When you're turning it like this, it's just kind of hard to get your fingers close to the edge. Right here, I can really control what's getting sharpened. Now, it does take a little muscle memory. So about the first 3 or 4 knives, you're going to have an uneven sharpening on your weak side. But I think my right side's still a little better, but my left's catching up pretty quick. I'll make sure I don't have any burr. I don't. This is the first time this knife has been sharpened. It's the first time it's had an edge put together. So I'm bringing it together for the first time on a 500 Sharpening. I got it grinded pretty thin, so I don't need to thin it out behind the edge. I'm just gonna put an edge on it. Not a full sharpening. Full sharpening is after you've kind of went through your first initial edge, and you need to remove a little bit on the shoulder behind the edge to create pretty much the original sharpness that you had. If you don't do that and you just sharpen it every time, you'll lose a little sharpness every time. You won't quite get it as sharp. So, okay, so I have a burr right here. So that means I'm going to stay on this side until I have a burr from tip to heel. Because since I have a burr here, if I flip it now, I'll get a dip-de-doo. So now I'm committed. I have to stay on this side until I have a burr. Okay, so what's kind of happening here is when you grind your knives, you should probably have a micrometer handy. And, always check the thickness behind the edge. So what happened is back by the handle is a little thinner than up by the front. What ends up happening is where it's thinner, you'll get a burr first. So the more even you can grind, the easier it will be to sharpen. And I can hear Knife Sharpen in Norway right now saying, use all of the stone. Please. You're paying for all of it. Use it. So that's what I'm going to do. This stone's pretty much just polishing. I feel like with 01 tool steel, it doesn't have really good edge retention. So if you put a toothy edge on something, it's kind of for when you're sawing stuff. And what would you saw? You would saw rope. You would saw carpet. You would saw anything abrasive that I can think of. You would probably use a sawing technique to cut. So with 01 tool steel being a simple steel, I just kind of feel like the best possible edge to put on it would be polished. You know, because you're going to be push cutting. What do you push cut? Stuff that's not too abrasive. Stuff like tomatoes. Stuff like wood. Wood's really not that abrasive. You want to push cut a lot of the wood. Your face, you want to shave. Okay. Well, I mean, some people's beards are more abrasive than others, but so basically, if you're going to use a knife for cutting rope, use something with vanadium. When I get to this point, I like to just hold it in my hand. That's the best way I've found to get rid of the burr. Okay, here's my paddle, stropping paddle I got from Northwest Knife Guy. 0.5, half micron, and 1 micron. I love this strop. But once I got this strap from Northwest Knife Guy, it's really hard not to pick it up and use it. Because it does put so much better of an edge on. It's hard for me not to use it, as simple as that. The edge I get from this thing makes me feel like I was in the dark all these years. All right, this side I'm just going to go nice and gentle. All right, let's go do some sharpness testing. Okay, on to the sharpness test. Just a piece of paper. Of course, it's going to cut a piece of paper. Piece of paper here, which, it's really not a test. Here's a dryer sheet. So that's a pretty clean cut on a dryer sheet. Anyway, pretty sharp. All right. Looking for how clean of a cut it is. It's good to go slow. Okay, water bottle. There we go. You know what, daggone it, I don't need a 2x4. I need a 1x4. Or a 1x1. So that's what I'm going to have to make here. Now we got us a 1x1. Who needs a circular saw? Paper towel. 01 tool steel ain't so bad after all. Decent little feather sticks. So there's some safety glasses. This thing's pretty hard. It's about 64 or 63. It's a very, very hard knife. Okay, time to do some edge stability testing. Here is a piece of brass. It's pretty hard on an edge. It seems to bounce right back. Let's see. There it is. On to some ironwood. Very hard wood. It's pretty hard on an edge. Still pretty sharp. I'm not going to do a tip test because look how skinny and thin that tip is. I do a decimal taper all the way to the handle. Well, so my final thoughts on 01 tool steel. I haven't made a knife out of 01 tool steel in a long time. I do recommend this for beginner knife makers, and I know a lot of people say you shouldn't. I just feel like 01's had a bad rap. You won't get probably maximum performance if you're using a propane forge. You kind of need a heat treat oven to do that, but you can still make a good knife out of a propane forge. And because of its ease of grindability, drilling, I mean, just working with it, ease of sharpening, how sharp it gets with that 1% carbon in it, I suggest getting a blade in 01 tool steel. You know, don't be afraid. You know, everyone tries to scare everyone away from 1095 and 01 tool steel. Could you make a better knife with a propane forge with 1084 or 1075? Yes, probably. But why limit yourself with just a couple steels? When all I had was a propane forge, I used to use ABL and everything. Now you can do it. Don't be afraid to try it. So I like 01 tool steel simply for it's tool friendly. Takes a nice good edge. It's great for stuff that isn't abrasive. It's a lot like W2 as far as performance. And yeah, I suggest it. I highly suggest 01 tool steel for a beginner. I think it's a great steel for someone that's just starting or somebody that's been doing it for a long time. Just a good old-fashioned 01 tool steel. It's hard to beat. See ya.